Everybody, it's Katie. Today is Tuesday. Whether or not this video gets uploaded on a Tuesday remains to be seen. But I thought we could have a little talk about tools this Tuesday morning, and I thought we would talk about files. I think files are something that are a little bit confusing for people to purchase. There's all sorts of links and cuts and different types of files. There's hand files and needle files and escapement files and rifling files and different brands, and you go into file overload and you don't know what to pick or where to start or what to do. And if you don't have a place to go in and ask all these questions, it can be really, really confusing, and you can order things that are not what you want and waste your money with which we don't always have a lot of extra to waste. So for example, I have these hand files that are really, really long, and as a jeweler they're really too big. I mean, I have to really choke up on the file to file something, and then it just looks ridiculous here. Whereas I really want like this nice little fine file to file edges and stuff for. So these are both Grobet files. And you can see the difference in just the length of the two pieces. When you're ordering files and you're like, well, how long do I want them? You actually want to measure from the top to the bottom here, and not this handle portion. Now, the files don't come with these wood handles on them. They come like this. And so when you're let me put this down. When you're measuring to buy a file, you are saying this section here, not from here to here, not all of this, just this. So in this file, for example, this one would be a 6-inch file, and you can see 6 inches. See the handle pointing down here. So it's just this part here. If you were to measure the whole file, it says it's an 8-inch file, see? And that's where I ran into some trouble before, saying, well, I want an 8-inch file. No, I don't. I want the whole file to be 8 inches, but I only want 5 inches here. So that's what led me to get like these big daddy files here, because you can see from here to here is 8 inches on these guys, and that doesn't include this. So this is actually probably like a 10-inch file that I've got here if you measure from the top to the bottom of the tang on there. So that's a little confusing there. So you say, well, if you're not measuring the whole length, you're just measuring the cut portion of it. And then when you get into the needle files, like these guys here, it's actually the opposite. So talk about confusing, How are you supposed to figure out what you want? So now I've got this file here, and this one is about 6 inches long total, a little over 6 inches. But if I measure just the cut portion like I did on those big files, it's like 3.5 inches. So I had ordered these files, big hand files, and figured out, hey, I don't want to measure the whole file, I just want to measure the cut portion. And I assumed it would be the same with the needle files. So I had a needle file I liked, and I measured just this cut portion, which, like I said, was like 3.5 inches. So I go online and I go to order them, and I order a 3.5-inch needle file, and I get this little baby here. And he's actually 4 inches, but from top to bottom. And I was like, oh crap, now I have like these ridiculously huge files and these ridiculously tiny files. So when you're ordering needle files, you actually do want to measure the whole length for your whole file, so the handle included. So if you want this guy here, he's like a little over a 6. A little bit over a 6-inch file. So that's a little funny because let me go back to my hand files. This guy here is considered a 6-inch hand file because, again, remember, we're only measuring from here to here. This guy here is like a 6.5-inch needle file, and clearly they are not the same length. But again, we're only, for the needle files, we're measuring the whole file, and the hand files, we're only measuring the cut portion when picking our length. They just try and confuse us, I swear. Okay, so once you've got that all figured out, as far as lengths go, we go into cut. And what is cut? The cut is how heavy the teeth are, or how smooth they are. And they have the same kind of range of cuts between the hand files and the needle files. The cuts that I prefer to use are 2, 4, and 6 is kind of too thin in my mind. So I like 2s and 4s, 2 being heavier than the 4. And that goes for both the needle files and the hand files. 2s and 4s are good. Then we get into a little bit a tricky spot again. I'm telling you, they try and confuse you with these files. In that, when we go back to these guys here, the smaller the file's length, the finer the teeth in that particular cut. So, say for example, these are both 2 cuts on the file. This 2 cut is going to be thicker than this 2 cut. So this 2 cut is going to be a finer 2 cut than this one, just because of the size of the file. And that actually also goes into the hand files as well. If you get a shorter hand file, it's going to be finer in the same cut than a longer hand file. So there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on there to trip you up as a new file buyer. So what I would recommend is you could always call the company that you're going to buy and kind of ask them questions to make sure you get what you want, and you're not like me and end up with some really long or really short files. I like to, if you were going to order one hand file, as far as the shape of the hand files go, I would recommend getting a half round that has teeth on both the flat side and the domed side. So that way you kind of get a 2-in-1 kind of file where you've got the flat and the smooth. Of course, they also have these flat ones. They've got all sorts of different shapes. But if you're only going to get one, I would get the half round one with the teeth on both sides. In either a 2 or 4 cut, just depending on how fine of work you're gonna do. Probably a 2. If I'm gonna say just get one file, I'm gonna say half round 2 cut. Alright, so then we go into needle files, and of course they have all sorts of different shapes of needle files. And as you find what you like, you'll want to get different shapes, and depending on what you're working on. I do a lot of cutout pieces in my jewelry. So these, for example, you can see it's got all these little cutout holes in them. So having needle files is really helpful because the hand files are kind of too clunky and big to really file out these spaces really accurately. So that's where the needle files come into play. Now you can see this is the piece that I'm working on. You can see that it's kind of got like a burr here. It's not like perfectly cut out in this little cutout here. There's little snags from where the saw blade broke through. And that's where the needle files really come in handy. I like to have half round to get these curved surfaces, of course. And I like to have one of these that is flat on one side and has like the point, the pyramid on the top. And I can never remember what these guys are called. But these are good for, you know, then doing your flat spaces in here. And then of course you've got your square file. I do a lot of geometric shapes, so that one's really good for me. And you've got your round needle file also, so those are good for round shapes obviously, and curves as well. And one other kind of file I do want to kind of touch on briefly is an escapement file. This is an escapement file. You can see it's actually got a really long handle and actually a very short amount of space that has teeth on it. So this is good for, you know, getting in there really fine little details. And there's so many different brands and other types of files out there, and you've just got to really look and see what's going to work well for your particular project. I hope that demystifies it a little bit and didn't make you even more confused than what you were to start with. If you do have any questions that I didn't answer in the video, go and leave a comment below and I'll try my best to answer them. Alright, so till next time, bye.